Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Debbie Kerry. Welcome to the 12th episode of the Pan-African Leadership Center show. Today, we are going to talk about the changing dynamics of violent extremism in the Horn of Africa and in the Greater Africa region. But for a start, this is my first time hosting this show. But I will be with you for the next few weeks, I hope. My name is Kerry Debbie. I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, presently practicing as a PCV practitioner. PCV here means preventing and countering violent extremism. So I work in an organization that deals with that. For everyone who's joining us and for those who are yet to join us, we are streaming live on the United States of Africa Facebook page, the Pan-African Leadership Center YouTube channel, and our LinkedIn profile. For our guests today, we are pleased to have 3 guests, but 2 of them have already joined us. I think the third one will be joining us as we go. So our first guest is called Mr. Jeffin Ntabana. Maybe I will let him introduce himself just briefly. Jeff, I can see his network, he has network issues. Hi Jeff, can you hear me? Thank you, David, for joining us. Our second guest is called Mr. Ibrahima Size, who is the project manager at West Africa Relief and Development Association. And finally, our third guest is Mr. David Dalton, who is a Pan-Africanist and a geopolitician. But for practice, I think he's working in finance and banking because he's a graduate of finance and banking. With that, I will ask Mr. David to start us off. Hi, David, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. David, please just introduce yourself to our viewers.
Okay. My name is Senkungu David Dalton. I'm from Uganda, Africa. I am an instructor at the National Secretariat for Patriotism Clubs under the Office of the President. And I have a bachelor's degree in banking, finance, and insurance.
Okay.
And I've been ambassador of Rolls-Royce, and I fly aviation team. It's basically science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Well, yeah, and I'm the marketing director of T6 Global. It's a company that does so much tourism in our country here in Uganda, and knowing you and nice joining this beautiful platform.
Thank you, David, for that. Ibrahima, please introduce yourself to our viewers.
Okay, let me begin by first saying greetings to my fellow Pan-Africans and African compatriots from West Africa. And to my Northern Africans, I will tell them, Assalamu alaikum, marhab. So, and also my Eastern African compatriots can tell them, Vipi Haliban. So, in short, my name's Ibrahima SCC. I've been based in Eastern and Northern Africa for the past 5 years. and currently back to the Gambia. My leadership roles in Sudan, particularly, has been an activist there and a promoter of Pan-Africanism, which we've been doing for the past 5 years in order to battle and combat any idea that promotes African inferiority over when it comes to African relations to others. And back right now, I work for a humanitarian organization and Relief and Development Association. I'm glad to be here.
I can hear a lot of background noise from our guests. Please ensure that you have a bit of silence in your background. So thank you for that brief introduction. And to start us off, our theme for this discussion would be the changing dynamics of violent extremism in Africa. And maybe I'll just put it to our guests. Anyone can take this question up. Kindly tell our viewers what you think or what is your understanding of violent extremism or radicalization.
Well,
David.
okay, well,
Yeah.
when we talk of the changing dynamics of violent extremism in the Horn of Africa, I want us to first scrutinize what are we talking about as the Horn of Africa. So here, the
Yes.
Horn of Africa, we are looking at the Somali Peninsula, and it is the large peninsula of East Africa. It's located in the easternmost part of the African mainland and the fourth largest peninsula in the world. I hope we know that. And therefore, it being the easternmost extension of African land, it is defined as the region that is home to the countries like Djibouti, like we all know, Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Somalia, whose cultures have been linked throughout their long history.
Yes.
We also see that its coasts are washed by the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, and the Indian Ocean. And it has long been in contact with the Arabian Peninsula and the Southwestern Asia, if you can see by map. And therefore, Islam and Christianity have ancient standing in this Horn of Africa, and the people speak Afroasiatic languages related to those of North Africa and Middle East. And then that is the Horn of Africa. And then when you come to the meaning of violent extremism, these are the beliefs and actions of people who support or use violence to achieve ideological, religious, or political goals. This could include terrorism, other forms of politically motivated and violence, like we've been seeing in these countries. Therefore, the diversity of what may constitute violent extremism has to some extent been shaped by the activities of terrorist groups. And these terrorist groups, we have ISIS, Al Qaeda, and Boko Haram, which spread messages of hate and violence, as well as the religious, cultural, and social intolerance. And in doing so, these groups engage in violent extremism, often distort and exploit religious beliefs, the ethnic differences, political ideologies to legitimize their actions, as well as to recruit and retain their followers, like you see how those terrorists operate. And we look at the drivers of violent extremism in as far as the Horn of Africa is concerned. We are looking at two categories basically. We see the push factors, and these are the factors that are structured within society. They look at the pull factors, ones that are psychological, and an individual susceptible to undertaking violent extremist behavior you see in these countries. And so, giving you some of the primary drivers that normally necessitate this violent extremism, I'll mention one. First, lack of socioeconomic opportunities. Let's look at conditions like economic exclusion, unemployment, and limited opportunities, which have led to upward mobility of the youth, leading to frustration in these young people when they don't have things to do. They are easily lured into the ideologies of these bad groups. We are looking at the high numbers of educated, frustrated young individuals without jobs, which is a very big issue in many developing countries. So this
Thank you.
fuels grievances.
Thank you, David, for that. I think I will get back to you on that. Perhaps, Ibrahima, you'd like to add something to what David has said?
No, I just could not agree with him more than that. Like he just paid justice to that, and I'm very glad, honored to share this platform with the social and educated.
Yes, he has given us a very detailed understanding of what violent extremism and the Horn of Africa entails. Yes, I also agree with him that the Horn of Africa region has close to 11 countries. I can see we have another guest. Jeff, can you hear us? Perhaps as you're waiting for Jeff, Edrin, you want to add something to what the other panelists have said? Hi, Edrin. Okay, so quickly now I will start this discussion. The fact that we are talking about violent extremism, I also want to talk about, I want to bring in the concept of...
First of all, I would like Mr. David Dalton for giving me this opportunity to space with such youth.
Edrin, we can't hear you. Your mic is a bit low. Edrin. We can't hear you. In case you are hearing me, kindly add your volume. We can't hear you well. So as I was saying, I want to take this discussion. So perhaps I want to bring in the concept of radicalization and terrorism to this dynamic, so that maybe I request one of our panelists to tell us if there's a difference between violent extremism, radicalization, and terrorism. And anyone can take this up.
If I may comment.
Yes, please.
Okay, one can say, like we will say in East Africa, these are the languages of Mzungu. And at the end of the day, we as Africans will look at it, what is the end result of all of it? When it comes to terrorism, what causes it and what is the end result? The radicalization and violence in general, especially in that part of Africa which has a very deep part of my life, and it has a very great place in my heart. But when one look at Ethiopia, Sudan, part of Kenya, that is Mandera and Garissa, and you talk about Uganda, that part in general, you could see and compare it to the same case that is going on in northern Nigeria. The end conclusion is poverty is the root cause of all of it. Because when people have been very poor and they are very vulnerable to an extent, anything that comes to them, they can accept it without even believing it. I just discovered in the Gambia that people have been going from in order to go and join ISIS because they've been promoted very high amount of salaries. But in order for you to understand that these people are never coming back. So with terrorism, radicalization and the terrorism, you can say people are radicalized first and then they end up become terrorists and commit these terrorism acts. when you look at Sudan in particular, like right now, when you look at Sudan, you have a group of that call themselves Islamists, and they've been ruling the country for the past 29 years. And they use Islam in order to suppress people, because you could see when you look at the history of Sudan, 2003, 2004, there was no violence going on in the Darfur region. That's the western part of Sudan. But after their declaration of war against these people, and to be sad today, the vice president and the president of the ruling council of Sudan were the people that were responsible for violence that were going on in Sudan, in the Darfur side of it. That is the vice president. They call him General Hamdan Dagalo, and also Burhan. These are the people. Burhan was representing the government. Dagalo was the head of the militia. So you could see the government of al-Bashir, they were using Islam to radicalize people. Whereas the militia, they were using the tribe and the ethnicity in order to mobilize, to promote their violence. But is there any difference between the Hamdan Dagalo, who was using tribal and ethnic census and also ethnic lines to make sure that he made his lines cross in order to massacre 300,000 people in Darfur? Is there any difference between him and al-Bashir and his, who are using also religion in order to radicalize people, to fight against other people? So to my understanding, to my opinion, these are different words of Muzungu that all lead to end result. That's violence and crimes against the innocent women and children and men, if I may say.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Ibrahima. David, you have something to add to that?
Yeah, basically, if we are to talk about radicalization, I want us to look at the conditions inside maybe prisons, the conditions that maybe these prisons create. I'm just giving an example. Maybe let us look at the animosity, you understand, the ill treatment of maybe these prisoners, the institutional corruption and criminal activity, which can all serve as motivators for for these detained persons to seek for assistance and protection of violent extremist groups. Because we are looking at this prison as something that builds into the mind and the heart of someone to be called radical, someone to have that hard heart of I can do this. You understand? Now what we have to look at are the situations that these maybe terror young people, how they develop that heart, that radicalism of being hard-hearted to join such kind of things, maybe terrorism. We have to look at which aspect, what are those issues that force these young people to come out, and you understand, maybe it could be maybe how they feel about whatever is happening, because it's that need for change in them, but then in a negative way. That's what we need to focus on. Why do they want to have things changed, but in a negative way and not in a way of sitting down and resolving issues? Maybe they talk about things that people think are obvious, and they just give it maybe a blind ear or something. We need to see what is that happens that forces someone to be so protective, to develop that hard heart of saying, no, let me go and join this, let me join a terror group, I think that's what we need to focus on so much.
Thank you for that, David. So I think from what we're understanding from what you've just shared is that there are certain pull and push factors that drive people into becoming extremists, because nobody wakes up and becomes an extremist. There are certain things that drive them. Some of them are economic, some of them are political. It's a question of ideology. Sometimes it's political ideology, sometimes it's religious ideology, and perhaps the lack of economic empowerment. Those are some of the drivers that could inform why someone becomes an extremist. So now that brings me to my second question. Does violent extremism have to be physical, or can it also be a question of psychology and emotions? Does it necessarily mean that every time when we are talking about incidents of violent extremism, we are talking about like bombing people or chemical attacks, can it also occur in terms of psychological or emotional, torture, or if that makes sense?
Yes, if I
Uh-huh.
want to submit on that,
Yes.
it basically doesn't have to. Most of these issues are psychological than physical. Hmm?
Yes.
Because
Uh-huh.
let's see, maybe in these countries where all this happens, let us look maybe at uh, we are looking at maybe the policies, the repressive policies and practices which violate human rights and the rule of law, the potency of the lure of the maybe this violent extremism, which tends to be heightened, you know, which forces these extremists to actively seek to exploit state repression and other grievances in their fight against the state. So they are looking at maybe the ill works of these states and their agencies. So psychologically, the things that are done by maybe the people who represent the state, the agents of the state, psychologically, because let's look at, maybe we talked about the issue of corruption, of people who are highly educated but they don't have anything to do. And then this person who has gone to school is looking at someone else who has not gone to school, but they are living a life, you know, so good. Maybe because maybe these state agents maybe discriminate, maybe they do what. So someone will say they will get tired because they've studied, they don't have anything to do, they're unemployed. Because you understand, if I'm to tell you this on record, you will find very many young people who have studied. Someone did maybe a master's, bachelor's, and they can't even afford to get something to eat. They are not so sure about what they are going to eat the next day. That means radicalization of psychological, this one will be tortured. And therefore, if there is any shorter way that people can bring on board and they're like, no, let's use this maybe to overthrow the state, maybe to do this, and someone will just rush into that because psychologically they are tortured.
Yes,
They don't have anything better to think about
I
apart from
think
maybe using
that's what I'm saying.
Thank you, David, for that. Yes, Ibrahima, I think you want to add something.
Yeah, that's what I make the opening statement with. If you look at it, be it you call it radicalization, you call it extremism, you call it whatsoever you may call all of this, even the so-called rebellions that are going on sometimes, the root cause of it is poverty.
Yes.
Is that
All
these
right.
young people are poor, they're vulnerable, have no hopes in life. And as I said, if you look at Boko Haram, for instance, in northern Nigeria, this is where the population is almost 100% Muslim, but they're killing these people than any other person. The reason being because you have hundreds, if not thousands, of young boys and girls in the streets, hopeless, nothing to eat, it's no home to go to. So it's very easy for somebody to come and pick them and go program them in a certain manner because
All right. Thank you for that, Ibrahima.
they're
And now that we
hungry.
have, yes,
And it's the
I think
same case when you look at.
sorry, you're breaking a bit. I think the underlying factor for, at least for Africa, because with Western countries and European countries, perhaps their major cause of people joining those groups is not that they're not economically empowered, as opposed to African countries where our major concern is that our youths are unemployed and perhaps the families are not economically empowered and such, we find that these violent extremist groups have narratives that entice these people to come and join the groups with the hope and understanding that perhaps it's a form of employment, and at the very least they'll get an amount of money or some sort of income that will be distributed to their families. Because you realize that for African families, one person is the sole breadwinner for maybe 5 people. So when they have a source of income, 5 or 6 more people will be fed. So that is one of the push and pull factors that, especially a push factor for the African context. And now that we have laid a basis and understanding of why people join these groups, perhaps I'd put it out there. If you could list to our viewers some of the extremist groups in this region, other than, of course, the most obvious one is Al-Shabaab, that is in Somalia, but at the same time doing attacks in other regions of Africa. But there are other groups. So perhaps one of you could list to us and our viewers what some of those groups are. Because I am aware that Uganda has problems with the Lord's Resistance, had problems with the Lord's Resistance Army, and presently they are tackling the Allied Democratic Forces who are in DRC, but also recruiting people from Uganda. So whoever wants to take that up, please.
I think, if I must say,
Yes.
there is something that we need to know.
Yes.
About geopolitics, what they call geopolitics.
Yes.
An issue that affects one country will affect the other too.
Yes.
But people don't know. When people start talking about terrorism and what, they'll talk about Somalia, they'll talk about which country, but an issue that affects Somalia will affect its neighbors. An issue that affects Uganda will have to affect Kenya, will have to affect Somalia. Will have to. So, because when you look at countries, for the people out there, they think a country is a box. They are, because what separates a country from the other is just the psychological boundary. It's just psychological. Otherwise, when you see even at borders, you'll find that a border is not physical. So it is just large, where countries just know that for us we end here, others start from there. But it doesn't mean that the people are different. Therefore, geopolitics that for you to see a problem that is in another country, you don't sit down and say, "Oh, it is in Uganda." It is no. It affects everyone because people will just move. It's done by individuals. Therefore, we have to see. Like, for example, if you're in Uganda, you have to know what affects Somalia, and you have to be part of the solution to what Somalia is facing, because anytime it can reach you. What Uganda is going through, it has to be got a solution by also another country, because what is in Uganda the other day can.
Thank you, David. Ibrahima?
Yeah, I like, as David is saying, these are no longer things that are, they're not anymore, because, for instance, the university that I studied in Sudan, called International University of Africa, you almost find people from everywhere, from 80 different nationalities. You find Kenyans, Ugandans, Filipinos, Chinese, and there's a way of thinking that is there. It is in the air. You'll find a Ugandan who thinks that way. If he has the opportunity, he's going to do it in Uganda. You find a Chinese guy thinking the same way. You find a Kenyan guy thinking the same way. So, as he said, it's no longer a national thing to say this is a Somali or these are things, ideas that are going on, and we can all agree that we as Africans, and therefore you see why there's a need to preach the messages that have been preached by the founding fathers before. to understand who you are as an individual. Because if you listen to Osama bin Laden, for instance, when the Kenya and Tanzania bombing started, and one of the young soldiers of Al-Qaeda confronted the leadership that why must we kill all of these hundreds of Africans in Tanzania if our war is only with Americans? The simple reply was to this young soldier that at the end of the day, these are just Africans. So I always tell my fellow Africans, when you're joining any group of people, understand what is their perspective of you as a Kikuyu individual, as a Luyo individual, as a Mandinka, as a Wolof. Are you seeing the same way, the way they're seeing themselves? Because at the end of the day, it matters for you to understand who you are as an African. And most of the people you will find in our universities today do not know these things about themselves. It's easy for them to go and kill people with a gun. But when you confront them psychologically, why do you do this? Why must you kill people? Most of these people cannot give you a concrete answer. Therefore, the thinking comes to in mind, what are we learning from the schools? Because this is no longer a Somali problem. Al-Shabaab is not, you mentioned that we should mention some of the groups to you, contrary to the known groups. For instance, when you go to Sudan, you'll find the Janjaweed group. These are a group of people, they control very large part of the government today. They call them Rapid Support Force. They are the ex-militia that committed atrocities in Western Sudan. They killed, massacred over 300,000 people, and now they're part of the government. You can mention about the Tigray people, the rebellion that is going on in Ethiopia right now. It is not about the national war to make sure Ethiopia survives. It's a Tigray nationalism. And that is the idea that you may call Al-Shabaab using Islam doing. The Tigray government or the leadership there, they're using a tribal ethnicity. That is part of the East in the Horn of Africa. When you come to my own Western Africa, we do not have nobody more than Al-Zawad of Mali that went and repeat the same crime that their forefathers did when they destroyed Timbuktu. They came again and did it. And also, you can mention about the Al-Qaeda front that is currently based between Mauritania and Mali. So, when you look at what is the relationship between all of these groups, that there's a relationship between Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Boko Haram, and because their agenda is the same thing. And you can connect it to the Fulani hordes that are going on right now in the northern Nigeria, invading other regions of Nigeria, the southeast, and southwest of the Europe. So at the end of the day, it's all political at the end of the day. It's not about religion. It's not about ethnicity. It's about the politics. People behind this group of individuals are trying to dominate in the regions they reside in.
Thank you very much, Ibrahima. And now I want to ask something else. And even as I'm asking that question, I want now, based on the discussion we've just had, we've recently had, I'm sure all of us have seen the news, and we've recently heard of let me call it terror, the terror that is going on in Mozambique, the conflict that is going on in Mozambique, the attacks that we've seen, the children that are being recruited into child soldiers. And it goes into what David has just said. What affects one country affects all the other countries, because it's affecting the entire Africa region, for example, because we are seeing the conflict involves more than just the people there, and more than just the group that is affiliated to ISIS. There's also conflict that involves the Al-Qaeda related groups. So what you've just said, Dalton, is very true. And which brings me to this. So what are some of the signs of a person who is radicalized or has this violent extremist ideological tendencies? Are there some signs? Is there something that, is it set in stone? What indicates that someone is a radicalized person? Say you have a son, or you have a daughter, or perhaps a brother or sister. What would tell you that?
One.
Yes, David.
You see, You see, someone who is radicalized, you can see from the way they relate with others. Like, for example, you can't be African and you start segregating people that so and so is Rwandi, someone so and so is Kenyan, someone so and so is, because I mean, what is that? What is Kenya? What is Uganda? They all issue with Africa, and we are all Africans. So you see, by the way they segregate others, they promote so much of their cultural beliefs than the national interests. Find someone here from the tribe, so I don't like a person from the other tribe. And you know what is that? Because even when you trace the history of our tribes, we all maybe came trekking from somewhere else in a different country. And we understand our great grandfathers may be scattered here and there, others were taken as slaves. So those who went maybe to the maybe USA, maybe other countries. So that's maybe where our other sisters are. So how you know someone who is radical? By the way they segregate others. This one doesn't belong to us, yet they know we are family. Then they don't love their countries. They don't love their countries. They don't respect people's lives. That's why you find that someone can choose to go and blast a bomb amidst thousands of people because they don't respect people's lives. Secondly, they do not. They talk in terms of petty interests. They don't put the interests of the nation on the table. They don't put interests of the continent of Africans on the table. They look at small interests. They look at dividing people. For you belong here. For you, a Christian. For you, a Muslim. Because everyone has a sense of belonging, but it doesn't mean that because someone belongs to a certain category, he's not part of you. Because we are all Africans, and Africa is like any other continent. But what is keeping us back are these radical people, people who segregate, people who talk ill about their countries. You find someone posting, using social media for their own interests, but tarnishing the name of their country. Like, for example, let me tell you, you find someone talking ill of their country. So even me, an African who would want maybe to go to another African country to maybe get exposed and what, I'll fear because someone told me, there is this fire here, there is fire here. So radical people always promote hatred for their continent and for the black people. Radical people do not feel proud of they themselves being African. They don't feel proud at all. They want to like the other people. For me, the worst thing I know about these radical people is that they spread hatred and they never respect people's lives. Yeah.
I think they've. I'm glad that I shared this platform with you today. I'm very proud of you. And if I may add some points today, because I live with most of these people I live with. I witness Kenyans. There are Kenyans that do not feel anything that they belong to Kenya. They do not care anything that when it comes to Kenya. I've seen Ugandans who will rather die for another country than die for Uganda. Oh, but how you realize a radical, if he's a Muslim or Christian, find them reading about this religion in depth. But they will equally the same be against the members of their own community. They do not respect elders of the community, nor do they. You will not see them participating in the community services because they think today the community we're just not on track where we're supposed to be. And all the way, how do you
I think you are
standing to on the Gambia? They will tell you only my tribe. You can hear
Thank
somebody, for instance, a country where you have 20 or 30 tribes in the same country, the person telling you only my tribe can be a president in this country. There, when it comes ethnic wise, these are the radical people. Or you will find somebody who will tell you in this country only a Christian will be president, only a Muslim will be president. And where this is not a Christian kingdom and it is not an Islamic empire, it is a nation state. And people should be voted based on their integrity, based on their consistency, based on their love for the country, based on their nationalism, but not based on what you. And you'll find out if they will love a radical person will always love somebody because you are saying what they believe in. But any day you choose to speak your mind on other issues, you become the most hated person. Even you are the father of this radical.
you for that, Ibrahima. And that there's a bit of background. I can hear myself on your mic. So I think you need to work on that. Yes, Damian, you want to add something? Damian, hi.
Hi.
You want to add something to the discussion we are having?
Yeah, I just want to say just a word.
Yes, go on. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for this forum. And can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
First of all, what I would like to say is it has been a long time since Africa has been relying on other countries, and that has been the main problem. I don't know whether it's because of leadership but to my opinion, it has been about leadership. Because for a long time, we have leaders who have not realized that Africa as a continent is capable of being on itself. Because I have been asking myself, Africa is one of the continents with a lot of natural resources. But if you look, most of the companies that do those minings, they don't belong to Africans. They are from outside. So 90% of the revenue that is collected from there goes back to their country. So a lot of maybe a small portion is the one which is left in Africa, and most of it is going to some individuals. That's why you see even those countries with high potential of high minerals, the poverty level is still very high. And I think it's time that our readers, maybe this generation, I have been saying on my Facebook that maybe it's this generation that will change Africa. We are people who are educated, we have knowledge, we have every capacity, but is it because that those leaders who have been there for years, they are putting block on few of us? Because we have seen visionary leaders who come to power, but they are not getting a room to penetrate because of the block that have been put. So maybe some of you guys will maybe tell me, because I have been wondering, if you don't love your own country, then something is wrong. It's just like your house. If you don't love your house, I think there's somebody with too much noise coming from somebody. I don't know who is.
David, I think the noise is coming from your side.
My side? No, I don't.
David,
I don't think
not
so.
Damian. No, not Damian. David.
David. Okay. So can I proceed?
Yes, proceed.
Yeah. So I'm trying to look forward where this generation will come, and I would ask the leaders who have been there for a long time. At least it's good for them to listen to this generation, because we have people who are capable of doing things in a different ways. Because people have been educated, we know how economy works. But if they don't accept that it's real change, the real change has come so that they can incorporate this young generation with vibrant and visionary for Africa. I think it's going to be hard, but we have to talk to them, let them accept change, let them go with what people are thinking, because I'm looking like a situation whereby now we have COVID cases. We cannot even produce any vaccine. We have to wait. You know, it's like we are begging, okay, these guys on the other side, they are vaccinating their people, but now we have to wait for them to finish, then they distribute what they have left for us. You know, I know things will change. Let me say things will change, and we can see now things changing now, because I can see, like in my country, they are talking of bottom-up economy, whereby, you know, you have to make sure that these people who are here, they are uplifted so that the poverty level cannot be that huge. We have 2% of those people who are rich and 90% who are very poor. They cannot even afford a meal. But Africa as a continent should come together. The leaders should come together, because even this thing of violence, every tribe, you see, there is this tribe coming against this tribe. If we don't accept that as a nation, one nation, we are just one nation. Let us not be divided among tribal lines. You know, we should accept, if you come from Sudan, you come from Kenya, let us all know that we are one nation. Then we can start spreading to other continents, to other countries. Because if we don't stabilize the security in this country, you know, there are people who like us when we fight, because that's when they benefit. So if we don't realize that there are people who are making us to fight, we come together, then we start solving our problem as a united Africa from one country. But it has to start from one country, because we cannot be fighting in our country, then we are going to talk to another country to be united. No, we have to start from each country should have solved its problem. Why are we fighting? Are we fighting because I don't like this person from this tribe? Am I fighting because this clan is, you know, we need to come together, then we start spreading to other countries. Because if we don't stabilize Africa, there is no way we shall be having united Africa. So that is my point. We shall talk and talk. Let's talk to these leaders. Let's unite them. So why don't we spread to other countries? Let's stop fighting, because if we don't stop fighting amongst ourselves, there is no way we shall unite ourselves. So that is my point. I think maybe we shall talk more, and I like this forum because let us talk so that we can change Africa. I don't like the way our young girls are going and being humiliated, killed in Saudi Arabia. I feel bad when we move out of Africa to go and look for greener pasture outside. We shall turn Africa, and then they come to Africa to get jobs, because we have our resources, but we have to stop them from coming to Africa and utilizing our resources to go back and build their countries. We need to stop that. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Were you able to hear me?
No. Are you talking to me?
Okay. Let me take that again. Thank you for that discussion, and thank you, Damian, for that well articulated thought. Now, what we were discussing initially was the science of a radicalized person. Yes, and then
Okay.
now my next question would now be: once you have realized that there's an individual you know or a youth somewhere who is displaying tendencies of radicalization, what do you think would be the best approach?
I think one of the things that we should ask ourselves, why are we having this radicalization?
Mm-hmm.
What has led to a lot of youth being radicalized?
Yes.
I think for many years we have ignored
Mm-hmm.
that if we, I talk of economy because if you don't have a stable economy, that means you don't have enough jobs.
Yes.
Remember, we have people who are graduating, students who are graduating. When they come out, where do they go?
Mm-hmm.
So they come out with degrees, with diplomas, expecting to get somewhere. So if they don't land that opportunity, jobs, and life will not stop. Life will continue. So these are people who need somewhere. They have a sober mind. They are fresh from school, and they come out and they don't find anywhere they can attach themselves. So what's gonna happen? They will look for any opportunity. So because I have friends who have joined crimes. It's not that they like to be criminals, but it's because that is the only opportunity they were introduced to. Because like, okay, why are you doing here? I can show you something to do. Only to realize that the job they landed is being maybe a gang.
Mm-hmm.
So let us stop ignorance. Let's focus. Let's know that world has changed. And I'm talking to readers. They should understand that these people who are coming out, they need to find a conducive environment whereby they will not have idle minds to think of something else. They will come to school, they will run somewhere. Because if they don't do that, that's why these people are going outside to be radicalized. Because I have seen people from my country, they have gone and being radicalized only to come back. And I'm like, you hear somebody saying, oh, I have not seen my son for the last 6 months. But the parents don't even know where the kids are, but they have been shipped out. Because that's where they are told, okay, if you come here, you will do 8 things. We are going to produce for you. We're going to provide for you. Don't be there. So they become easy target because they are vulnerable. But if that person is busy 24/7, he is not going to get time to go and look something or think about something else because that person is busy. And that's why the Western have defeated us on that one. Because if you look, why are these people asking for people to come and work there? Because they have a lot of jobs, but they don't have people to work. So we should do that in our countries, in our Africa, so that we have less people who are idle. At least you are coming out thinking, okay, I will get somewhere. I have my degree. I'll run in a job, so that you don't have that time wasting trying to think, okay, I'm here. I don't have anything. I don't have anything. Then you will have some bad person waiting for you to grab you, and it will be an easy target. So the thing that we should talk about is let's create more jobs for our youth to land on.
Thank you very much, Damian. Dalton, good to have you back. I think for a moment there you were not able to hear me. We are talking about my next question, which was, initially we were talking about the signs of a radicalized person. And now you're talking about the fact that now you have realized that someone you know, perhaps a child, perhaps a youth working around you or living around you, perhaps a brother, perhaps a sister, is showing signs of being radicalized, what do you think would be the best approach to handle that scenario?
Can I finish? Can I finish? Just a moment.
Yes, Damian, you can finish.
Yeah, the best thing is just make sure that person, you know, if you have to call them, because I have seen whereby a number of youth have been identified, and when they come, just try to talk to these people, because as I said, they will always have the reason why they end up being radicalized. That's what I was trying to say. And most of them, because I have seen them, they will say, okay, we have come from school, we don't have anything. So the best thing is try to talk to these people. Maybe you can take them to rehab, maybe organize. But then after you take them there, if they come out and find that the same situation, they will go back. That's what I was telling you. These people should be occupied by training them. So no matter where you take them, just talk to them. No, okay, I know you went there because you were vulnerable, you were looking for green pasture, but that was not the right way to go there. Please come here. We're going to give you immunity. We're going to talk to you guys. Then we're going to take you for maybe a 6-month rehab. Then from there, we shall take you maybe to a technical school whereby you will learn a certain skill. And then maybe we shall give you a little capital to start a business. That is the only way I can advise if I find somebody who is radicalized.
Thank you for that, Damian. David? Dalton, can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes, I can. Sorry, the network is a bit. Yeah, but maybe my advice would be like
yes.
in the efforts to curb such events. Hello?
Yes. We are able to hear you.
Yeah, like yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying. Yeah, that maybe in the events to curb such events and groups, sub-regional and regional organizations have been engaged in a range of activities, and these have been aimed at ultimately at preventing and countering violent extremism, which include, for example, in the case of Somalia, due to the often brutal activities of Al-Shabaab, which sometimes extend into neighboring countries like Kenya and Uganda, like I talked about geopolitics. In response, the African Union Peace and Security Council, they project their foreign policy concerns in relation to the issues of peace and security. It has acted to strongly condemn violent extremist ideologies and narratives, which has been done, and recognize the integral role of these phenomena in the ultimate execution of terrorist acts. Therefore, also the African Youth Division has also recognized the importance of increased engagement with the youth of Africa on a number of issues as part of a more comprehensive regional approach. And as a person, I think that it is high time we started thinking in terms of Africa as Africans to solve African problems. And so all these issues, I think we should just sit down as us in the different young people that we can reach out to mentor them and to love them really, so that we don't just look at people and think all things are obvious. Some people just lack some love really, to be shown that they're really loved, they're not alone. The mentorship, knowing, because now let me tell you, like my brother Damian has been saying, you'll find Africans who are dying to go and spend their lifetime in Europe, in Asia. And how are they leaving their continent, Africa? This is Africa whereby you find someone who can't even make a toothpick. How can we import toothpicks from China? Isn't that shock? How can we import toothpicks from China? Just toothpicks. So, Damian, you should advise me on that. So, we should think about African issues being solved by Africans. That's all I can maybe submit, and loving ourselves as Africans and aiming to make Africa great. Africa should be great, and it is going to be done by me, you, and you.
Thank you very much, Dalton.
Yes.
And I can see our time is up. So I am just going to ask for final thoughts on this subject. I think this subject is a very important discussion that cannot be said or had in one meeting. So hopefully we can continue the conversation online. So I'm just going to ask for our final thoughts on this subject. Perhaps Ibrahima, you'd go first.
Yeah, when I think I have to say asante sana to my brother from Kenya. I mean, and I'm always glad to see people from different corners of the continent. I just wish when on my trip to Kenya, when I was going to Kibera and other places, I met you because I was in those places. And Kenya has a great place in my heart anyway. When it comes to violence and when it comes to Africa in general, as I say, I am somebody who is coming from very vulnerable background, and I grew up in an environment where I could have been radicalized. I could have been any type of individual, but I chose to follow the path where to ask questions that are not comfortably answered, and questions that question the ethnicity, it question the religion, it question the nationalism itself. Why must I learn Kikuyu? Why should I learn Kiswahili? When I started learning Swahili, I communicate the whole of East Africa, and I speak Somali. I understand the perspective of the Somali people, and I try to learn the Hausa and the Yoruba, because we must talk to one another. We are the youth, we are the future of this continent. But to my country in particular, in the Gambia, that we're supposed to go into polls in December 4th, that we're supposed to have the presidential elections. Youth have been galvanized and they've been mobilized, and hatred is being preached to an extent that you think this is not the same country people are going to polls in order to serve the country. But it's, as PLO said, elections in Africa are sometimes like it's an animal. Then they said the experimental zone is going to be Africa. It's never been, and this animal is never been seen anywhere. And I advise myself as a youth of this continent, and to all the youths of all the countries of Africa. Our ancestors were the head of the civilization in the world. We were conquered once as a people, but God has made a system where any nation that wished and they walk to be the heads of the civilization, God gives it to them. And there's nobody that has a history more than us as Africans. Yes, we can celebrate our different tribes and ethnicities. We can celebrate our Christianity and our Islam, our African spiritualities. But at the end of the day, when Columbus massacred Americans and he sent his people to Africa, they were not looking for Kikuyu and the Kamba and the Luya, and they were looking for Africans to enslave all of us one. When the Arabs were coming to Eastern Africa, the Tipu and his people in the Eastern Africa, they were not looking for people who who are from Bantu or who are from South Coast or who are from Sudan. They were enslaving all of us in the name of Islam, and therefore our agenda is African agenda. We survive together, or we're going to be perishing together.
Thank you very much for that, Ibrahima. Damian, quick word.
I think my point will be, let's stay united. I know we, as an African, we can do great things if just we come united. Let's love ourselves as Africans. Because if you don't love yourself, don't expect somebody to love you if you don't love yourself. So let's love ourselves as African. And as I said, I know there are so many youth who are jobless. And that's the reason why they are being used by groups, certain groups, politicians, because they know these people, they don't have anything. But if we utilize all what we have in Africa, then we shall not be talking of election being like it's a dying. Because if you see these African countries having elections, you will think that country will end tomorrow. because nobody wants to lose. You know, people will do everything not to lose because the systems, they don't work. But it's this generation who will make the institutions work independently, so that if somebody lose, that person will lose independently. So we know everything will be okay. I know if we preach this peace and peace and peace, and especially to our young generation who are there looking for anything that they can get, I think it will reach a point whereby which everybody will love Africa as a continent.
Thank you very much for that. Dalton, a quick thought, your parting shot.
Oh, okay. Mine is simple. African solutions to African problems. Therefore, as Africans, we shouldn't sit behind and have to resort to getting solutions outside our area. And therefore, as Africans and the young people of Africa, old and young, we should think for the betterness of our continent, because I must tell you, we are the most blessed people in this world. And therefore, we shouldn't take that for granted. We should love ourselves. We should be united. We shouldn't differentiate ourselves, maybe tribes, maybe clans, maybe religions, and what. We should be one person. And when we come inside the box and make Africa great. African solutions by Africans for African problems. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone. We have come to the end of our show, but that does not mean that we have come to the end of this discussion. This is a discussion that needs to be continued online and in your other places of work and in the various places. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here. I know it's not easy, so thank you very much. We hope to see you again. And with that, I think we have come to the end of this discussion. I wish everyone a good evening and a blessed day and a blessed weekend ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.